Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, we go back to the Sarah Boone case again, and you see on the thumbnail on the screen, Sarah Boone suffers a major loss. So what do we mean by that? Well, days before jury selection begins in her murder trial, Sarah Boone took the witness stand at a motions hearing as she tried to get key evidence in her case suppressed. Boone faces a life sentence if she's convicted of second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr. Torres was found dead, zipped inside a suitcase inside the couple's apartment after a night of drinking in February 2020. Boone stated, "I was very confused, very hazy." She said that from the witness stand on at a Wednesday hearing. It didn't understand the monumental amount of people that were at the crime scene and what they were doing. I was worried about my dogs. I was worried about my son. I was in shock. I was traumatized by the situation, trying to focus on everything going on at my home. I was hungover. I believe I was still intoxicated to a degree. Boone took the stand as she and her ninth attorney, James Owens, fought to have a 2-hour recorded interrogation that Boone did with detectives at the Orange County Sheriff's Office on February 25th, 2020, suppressed. Owens pointed to Boone's testimony as evidence that she was coerced by detectives because she felt she had no choice but to speak to them. A key issue regarding the recording is whether Boone was correctly read her Miranda rights. So we'll go into that a little bit, of whether she was correctly read her Miranda warnings and or rights, warnings, whatever you want to say, and what impact that has on the case, if any. So, folks, hold on to your hats. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
A note from our newest sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. So, folks, without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our co-host this evening, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Michael Geary. Mike, welcome.
Bill, thank you for having me on. Thank you very, very much. This will be a great show.
You know, Mike, we covered this show before, and it is truly outrageous in some ways. And there's Jorge right there, Jorge Torres, who lost his life over 4 years ago. And this somewhat of a horrific case, suitcase murderer. That's what it's been tagged as. Sarah Boone, the suitcase murderer. How can any human being hear a loved one inside, and maybe they had their problems, inside a suitcase, basically begging you to let him out because he's going to suffocate. He's suffocating. He can't breathe. And you ignore his cries for help, and you do absolutely nothing, Mike.
Bill, that's the horror of it, because we have it on video. She filmed it and you could hear him. I don't know what their life was like. I know there was, mutual, domestic violence allegations, and they both had been previously locked up over the course of their time together as a couple with a lot of drama. But when you see a person in a suitcase and they're saying very calmly, "I can't breathe. Please, babe, let me out. I can't breathe." And she's filming it, and she's laughing, and she's letting him know this is payback for what, she feels that he has done to her. That's very haunting. And, later on when the police come and there's a statement made, that's one thing. But to actually, you don't get that visceral reaction until you actually see that video. And when you see that video, you realize this is a slow, torturous death. And that is really horrible to think about, how that person passed away.
Yeah, I'm going to play a little bit of this right now so you can get a feeling of what this poor man was going through.
Sarah.
On the
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
For the folks that are listening to this and not watching this, he's in a suitcase in the middle of their home, begging for his life, begging for her to let him out. He's zipped up in this suitcase, and she's basically taunting him and almost saying, in essence, "Good for you."
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. I want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you chewing on me.
Sarah.
You.
Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the up.
Sarah.
Quite horrific, I would say. One of the things also that you could tell through, or I think you can tell, unless you're ignoring how she sounds extremely intoxicated. She's slurring her words, right? Basically, she's saying "good for you" type thing, not "oh, I'm going to help you." Oh, she's taunting him, and her very words are going to wind up getting her convicted in a court of law, because as he's begging for his life, she's basically saying, "Good for you. You can't breathe. Good for you. That's what happened to me when you tried to strangle me." She said something in those words. So if you can't differentiate between right and wrong, which clearly here she couldn't, the right thing to do was to unzip him out of there and let him live. Instead, she drunkenly went upstairs and passed out and didn't get up for like 12 hours. and then it was time to check on him the next day. What do you think happened to him the next day, Mike?
Yeah, he was unresponsive. She said she tried CPR, but he had already passed away. Yeah.
But how could she not think that that was what was going to happen if she didn't unzip that suitcase and let him breathe?
Yeah. You know, you think about it, Bill, her words, her responses to him saying, Sarah, please, baby, I can't breathe. Sarah, seriously, I can't breathe. Her responses were, you know, F you, Sarah, that's my name, word up. That's how it feels when you choke me. That's how it feels when you cheat on me. You know, her words reveal her thought processes. She can deny them later on because she can claim she was intoxicated, but she was voluntarily intoxicated. When you are voluntarily intoxicated, you know, there is no excuse for your behavior under the law because it's voluntary. You controlled the amount of alcohol you were ingesting. So she ingested a lot of alcohol. He did too. And he's realizing he's in a real serious condition. And this is after, remember, this is after she had already rolled him down, tumbled him down in a staircase. So he's probably scared of his mind. And she's telling him to F himself. Those words are clearly, at the very least, is clearly reckless, shows a reckless disregard for his human life. And so, you know, the most she could ever probably get, I would think maybe if I was her attorney, would be a manslaughter conviction. But the idea that she rolled him down the stairs, but he bounced down in the suitcase. You can see this video that she made, and then she just passes out. You know, you can see that is clearly a total disregard for another human being's life. What did she think was going to happen? Or maybe she didn't think at all. But 12 hours in that suitcase, he's probably all like doubled over and can't even, his diaphragm can't even expand that much. That's really the horror of this thing. What she was doing was letting him know she's boss.
Pretty much. Damn Yell from the chat. That whole mens ray thing at Professor Geary. Well, people are learning stuff from you, Mike,
That's right.
from the professor here.
Thank you.
Melissa, she has no soul and she laughs. She will get what she deserves. Yeah, I would think that hearing her confession, hearing her interview by detectives is going to really hurt her a lot. I'm going to show some of her testimony in court just the other day.
Any further witnesses, evidence, or testimony, sir?
Would you like to call Sarah Boone?
Sarah Boone, the woman accused of zipping her boyfriend up in a suitcase and filming him as he struggled for air, says her interview with police should be thrown out. She testified in court this week that her rights were violated and that she didn't understand what was going on inside that interrogation room. You got everything you need to know from the Florida defendant's most recent court hearing. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Milner, in for Jesse Weber. The case against 46-year-old Sarah Boone is finally getting closer to a trial in Orlando, Florida. Boone was arrested in February of 2020 when her boyfriend, George Torres, was found dead inside a small suitcase in their apartment. Boone claimed they had been drinking and playing hide and seek when Torres got into the suitcase. She claimed she forgot he was in there and fell asleep. She got up hours later. Torres was dead. But Boone's story that it was all a terrible accident was questioned when detectives found videos on her phone of her taunting Torres while he was in the suitcase.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Jury selection is expected to begin in the case next week, so the attorneys have been hammering out last-minute motions with the judge, including wanting to throw out an interview Boone did with police after Torres was found dead, as well as a motion to allow Boone to wear makeup and civilian clothes during trial. So let's take you back to February of 2020. When the investigation first started, Orlando detectives spoke with Boone at the scene in their police car, and she agreed they could take her phone. She claims when she contacted them to get her phone back the next day, they tricked her into coming to the station for an interview, where her attorney argues she wasn't properly Mirandized.
You know, Mike, one of the things is that First of all, Kat in the chat, thank you so much for the 1999 super sticker. Very much appreciated. But the police tricked her into coming in by saying, "Oh, you want your phone back? You got to come in, and we'll give you your phone." Unbeknownst to many people in the public, the police are allowed to trick you. It's called a ruse, commonly known in the criminal justice field. If they know that they want to interview you and they know that you don't want to get interviewed, they can trick you into coming in the way they did in this case. And a defense attorney can argue that my client was tricked, and the judge can say, yes, case law says the police are allowed to do that. You want to speak upon that, Mike?
Yeah. The Supreme Court is ruled on this, and all the courts in every state has ruled on this because everyone has tried this. Every defense attorney has tried this. So long as the police obey the law when it comes to the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, Miranda, search and seizure, things like that, they can say things to you and suggest things to you that may be untrue to order to see how you react. So they may want to talk to her, but they don't want to drop off her phone and stop off at her house because they would need permission to come into her house, and she could deny it, and then they won't even get a chance to talk to her. So you say, come on down to Station House. We'll give you a phone back. Okay, come on down. Oh, by the way, could you just do us a favor? We just want to ask you a few questions. That's all. No problem whatsoever. We see this. We saw it in the Soto case. That's the way it goes. They're not violating any sort of constitutional right. They can always say and suggest things that may be untrue just to see how you react. There's not, that is well-defined case law. A lot of defense attorneys will always raise that. They'll always, pound on the table. My client has been tricked, but that is not the case when it comes to, judges in any state in the union. That's something that is clearly allowable under the Constitution.
Mike, when I was a sergeant in Manhattan North Homicide Squad, when we would have an important witness or perpetrator to interview, many times they would say, interview me right here. And we'd say, no, that's not how we do things. And basically, I used to compare it to, if you play a sport, do you want to play on your own home court, or you want to be a visitor? No, you want to be on your home court. And the other thing is, in interviewing either witnesses or defendants or potential perpetrators, you also need computer work to be able to do as you're testing their veracity or testing what they're saying is true or false. Because if you ask anyone that you interview, oh, have you ever been arrested before? 90% of the time they'll say, no, I've never been. And then you run their name and the computer starts just spinning page upon page out of the criminal history. So if you relied on the person you're interviewing to tell you the truth, not just that, have you ever made a complaint report against someone in your building? And they tell you no, and then you look and you see they're a habitual complaint filer. So all those are good reasons as to why you want to interview someone in your own home court, in your own precinct, in your own detective squad, not on their home turf, because that gives them the advantage. Let me go back to this recording here.
Here's some of what she had to say in that 2-hour interview.
My intention was not to leave him in there. Please understand that. My intention was not to leave him in there.
But you went upstairs thinking that he could get himself out, but the video shows
That's what I told you.
and I see his fingers.
He'll be up here any minute.
And then 30 minutes later, he didn't show.
And he's telling you
And I
he
didn't
can't
wake
breathe.
up.
Do you
He's
think
not
he's
able to get out.
joking? You told me he was laughing, and
We were
the
before.
video, there's no
When we
laughing.
first got in there, both of us were.
So how long was he in there for? Like, this video is at 11:12 when it starts, so was he in there for like a long time prior to recording this?
No.
So it goes from funny to no longer funny,
But
and
I
you're the
didn't,
only one laughing.
but I didn't think that he was like panicky. Like
So pushing up on a suitcase saying, Sarah, 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 I can't breathe.
George has done that in the past before too, where it's just like he thinks that he's woe is me kind of thing, where it's like, I don't.
He's never been locked in a suitcase. That's
No.
where he couldn't get out. So.
It's kind of. I thought it was
And
the
you know
boy
the oxygen
crying
is
wolf,
coming.
crying wolf kind of thing.
Okay.
And again, my plan.
But nowhere in there is he laughing, is he joking? He is begging. And you're the only one laughing.
Okay.
And you're the only one saying derogatory comments. Like you're mad.
No.
Every day we cover a lot of chilling stories, just like Sarah Boone's case on Sidebar and Law and Crime.
Let's get right to the testimony. We want
To Owen's arguments many times, saying that based on established case law, the detective doesn't have to say that. And things got a little bit testy in the courtroom.
And again, under the case law, there's no requirement for this question 9. Under any state case law regarding the Florida state constitutional right to not be compelled to testify against oneself, nor any federal or state case law regarding the United States Constitution, the Fifth Amendment applied to this state through the 14th Amendment that requires that question to be read. It does not go to the totality of the circumstances of the voluntariness of her waiver of her Miranda rights.
Response.
Judge, obviously we disagree.
Then where's the case that supports that? Because as I addressed previously, I read all the authorities.
I just want to make a point here. This judge has had it. This case has gone on for 4 years, right? This is the 9th attorney she's had. The 9th attorney, right? This judge is pissed off. And when this attorney comes in and he objects to the way Miranda was read, and the 9th question he claims wasn't read, and apparently in case law, it's not required, that question is not required to be read. So the judge wanted him to come with an argument. Well, this case says blah, blah, blah. He wasn't prepared to do that. So the judge says to him, the case law is clear. They're allowed to do what they did. And so your argument is mute. Moot. I'm not mute. That's someone that can't hear. Moot.
Right. Moot.
Moot. And, he wasn't getting it. So he was arguing something again, and this judge's opinion was wasting more court time because the attorney number 9, that's what we'll refer to him as, wasn't prepared in the eyes of this judge because you're arguing something with no legal precedent to back it up. Mike.
Yeah, there was no foundation for his argument. Of course, he didn't want to have that those statements, entered into court. But before you go into court, you better have something on your side, some previous case law in Florida or on the federal level, maybe in the circuit that covers Florida. I'm not sure what circuit covers Florida, but on the federal side, something in your pocket that you can offer to the judge, and maybe the judge will have mercy on you, depending on how close a call it is, whether they can go either way. But he had nothing. He had nothing to hang his hat on. He had nothing to offer the judge. All he said was, clearly we disagree. And he should have said, Your Honor, we disagree based on this case I found from, say, 5 years ago, blah, 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 and keep on going. Maybe he could find one case. Maybe the prosecution had 12 cases that said, don't worry about it, it's fine. And he found, say, one. You got to argue that one. And the judge, when he said, clearly we disagree, he didn't get 2 more words out of his mouth, and immediately judge shut him down. Oh, you disagree? Based on what? Tell me the court case. I've read them all. Tell me. If you can't tell me, basically he's telling him, counselor, if you can't give me a case to base your argument on, your argument is facetious. That's all it is. It's specious. Facetious, whatever the proper word you might want to use, I'd say facetious.
Basically, in the street vernacular, he's saying, put up or shut up.
Shut up. Exactly. And it was funny the way he did it, because that poor Mr. Owens did not get, 3 words out of his mouth. The judge shut him down. So he's tired of this. He wants to go to court, and he doesn't want any more messing around. That's it. He laid down the law.
Michelle Legrand, how did she get him in there? Well, Michelle, I believe what happened was they were both drinking and they were playing sort of a game. Mm-hmm. And he got in the suitcase voluntarily, not believing she would zip it shut and leave him in there. And that's what he learned the hard way, unfortunately. Joanne W., I think she dared him to. I can't even imagine how horrible it must be to die from asphyxia. And, someone said in the chat earlier, I thought if you could talk, you could breathe. Over a long period of time, if you're in a confined space, and when we breathe in oxygen, right? When we breathe it out, it's carbon dioxide, right? So pretty soon, the entire area that you're in has no more oxygen in it, just carbon dioxide. And if you're breathing, expended air, you're going to suffocate. And Mike, you made a good point before. Also, if your chest cannot expand, you will also die. That's something called restraint asphyxia. And I've seen that happen. And it could have happened to him in the suitcase. Schmitty from the chat, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Could she get time served even though she's been playing games and enjoying every minute of it? Schmitty, the 4 years she's done in jail will count towards her ultimate sentence. However, her ultimate sentence could be life without parole. So that would also be, I'll use the word again, moot point. Moot. Not
moot.
A moot point, because she may get sentenced to life without parole. So, but to answer your question, yes, the 4 years she's done so far in jail will count to her toward her sentence, Mike.
Yeah, if by any chance, some slim chance that she was found guilty by a jury of her peers of manslaughter, say they actually believed her story, and it was maybe a 20-year sentence, she would actually then only serve 16, and then she would have the 4 years. But like you said, if it's murder, it's probably going to be a life sentence, and therefore it's going to be a moot point. Yeah. It would only really matter if it was a sentence for manslaughter.
Mike, one of the, just to educate some of our listeners, there's something called restraint asphyxia. And when cops, when I came on the job, they were trained when you make an arrest, you put your knee in the defendant's back, and then you get him handcuffed, and you get the cuffs on. Once the cuffs are on, get your knee the hell off his back. Because if you don't, he or she can die of what's called restraint asphyxia, because the chest cannot expand when they're breathing. And as a sergeant, I would be very cognizant of that. And whenever I saw a cop do that and he had someone cuffed already, I said, get your knee off his back now. And sometimes they look at me like, because I'm doing it for your good, not for mine. Because if you keep your knee on his back, he's going to die. Do you want that to happen? Oh, no. So then get your knee off his damn back, So just to give you guys an example, what restraint asphyxia is all about. Back to the courtroom.
State versus Owens, State v. Thomas, Powell from the United States Supreme Court, which reversed the Florida Supreme Court decision, all talk about what's required by Miranda. And that question number 9 that you're focusing on isn't included in any of those.
I understand that, Judge.
It's the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney before and after questioning. If you can't afford one will be provided to you. Everything you say can and will be used against you. Those are the things that Miranda highlights. That Miranda opinion itself says that. So what does question number 9 have anything to do with those things if the state case law and the federal case law, including but not limited to Miranda itself and Powell, and then the state case law of Thomas and Owens, all of which were provided either by yourself or by the state, identify what's required, and that's not one of the requirements.
She has a duty to read the rights.
But they were.
I want to finish my argument.
Okay.
She has a duty to read the rights. She has an obligation to ensure that Sarah Boone understands her rights by asking that question. Do you understand the rights I've just read? And then there must be a waiver. Yes, I understand the rights, and I agree to speak to you now. So for that to be freely and voluntarily given, that statement, there must be a conscious waiver of the rights. The problem with the detective is she reads the rights. Do you understand the rights? And then she goes right into questioning. She goes right into questioning without saying, do you agree to speak to me? Understanding your rights, do you agree to speak to me now? That goes directly to whether or not it was freely, voluntarily, and knowingly given, the statement, and whether that waiver was. So under the totality of the circumstances, I think that evidence is relevant. It's the policy of the Sheriff's Department. Obviously, she had an old Miranda rights form, but she failed to read what we perceive as a critical question, and she's going to testify about what she perceived at the time that the detective failed to read that question and how it ties into the case. I understand that all they have to read is those four, but I think under the totality of the circumstances standard that this court has to apply, that should be a consideration the court should consider. I know it was an honest mistake. She had an old card, but still, I feel like it should be considered in your decision.
Detective Copsell was the only witness called by the state. When it was the defense's turn, Owens called Boone to the stand and asked her about her conversation with detectives outside her home at the beginning of the investigation.
What mental state did you have at that time?
I was very confused. It was very hazy. I didn't understand the monumental amount of people that were there and what they were doing with taking things from my home. I was worried about my dogs. I was worried about my son. I was in shock. I was traumatized by the situation, and then trying to focus on everything that was going on at my home. I was hungover. I was still, I believe, intoxicated to a degree.
Objection, Judge, move to strike. This is
Yes, she says I'm hungover and intoxicated.
Oops.
And her own attorney objects to her testimony.
That's really rare.
Well, I mean, will the judge strike that? She said it,
No, judge won't strike that. Those are her excited utterances. That's explaining her present sense impression of what she remembers feeling like that morning. That comes right out of the horse's mouth. No way that won't be admissible against her later on at trial. She said it. She said it.
She's trying to be like overly articulate, and at the same time, she said things. She's worried about this. She's worried about that. She's hungover. She's worried about her son. If you're so worried about your son, why did you get so drunk and hungover that you couldn't take care of him? I'm worried about my dog. Same thing. Why'd you get so drunk and intoxicated you couldn't take care of your dogs? And then come on the stand and start complaining about what you did to yourself. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, she's when the police first arrived, I am sure she was very confused about what was going on. Absolutely. And I think she probably did feel scared about all the people in her house and what it all meant for her, not what it all meant for Jorge. Okay, Mr. Torres.
Right.
She doesn't seem to, think about that part of it. But she's the one that created the situation. And she called when she went downstairs after 12 o'clock at noon. She woke up around 11. She got up out of bed around 12. She goes downstairs and she sees that Jorge is still in the suitcase. He's unresponsive. She doesn't know what to do. And she repeated that phrase several times. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. Okay. 911 is kind of like a good thing to call, right? She doesn't. She calls her ex-husband who lives a couple blocks away. And then he comes over and then they call not together. She calls 911. I'm glad in a way that the lady was very spontaneous, both to the police. Ms. Boone was spontaneous both to the police and in front of the court about describing her mental condition, her physical condition, because those are all spontaneous statements and they're all admissible in court, however which way the prosecutor wants to use them. But she's always thinking about herself. She's not thinking about Jorge Torres, who died of asphyxia in that little suitcase. And that's what is really scary about the whole thing, is that she had the ability to just open up that suitcase and none of this would have happened.
Absolutely. Joanne W. from the chat, you hit it on the head. Her ex said, no way am I getting caught up in this. He wanted no part of that. And she's trying to bring him into that. And, you know, there's a good reason why they're divorced. But he wanted no part of her shenanigans with this incident. Back to her testimony.
Because of her mental state or state of intoxication.
Response?
Judge, we're talking about, I'm just getting some preliminary information.
But
Her interrogation is the next day.
the state has an obligation, and the case law cited by the state requires specificity in the motions. So it's not a game of 20 questions and a surprise.
Okay, this is the day before the interrogation.
I understand that.
We're not talking about an
But are
intoxication.
you going to be arguing anything in conclusion as to what happened on February 24th led to any coercive or coercion behavior on behalf of the Orange County Sheriff's Office on February 25? Are you going to bootstrap or link any of those things together?
The interrogation in the squad car and what was said to her prior to getting in the squad car that relates to what she said about it being routine protocol, yes.
All right, I'm going to sustain the state's objection.
Relating to the intoxication?
Yes. It wasn't raised in any of the three motions that have been filed.
Judge, I didn't ask her that. She volunteered that.
I understand it. Objection sustained and it's stricken.
Did they ever indicate to you that you were a suspect?
No,
Did they ever indicate to you that you were a person of interest?
no,
Did they ever refer to the videos that you recorded on your phone from the night before?
no.
Boone testified that she stayed with her ex-husband and son that night at his home, then got in contact with Detective Copsall.
Did y'all have a discussion about your phone?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that discussion?
She told me that I needed to come down to the sheriff's department because she was pregnant, and asked me if I remembered about when I was being pregnant, and it would just be a lot easier for her if I were to arrive at the sheriff's department to pick up my phone.
Was there any discussion about you being interrogated at the sheriff's department?
No.
Was your understanding the sole purpose of you going to the sheriff's department the next day was to pick up your phone?
Yes.
And the sole reason for the change in plans from them bringing the phone to you was because Detective Copsall was pregnant and not feeling well? So the next afternoon, did you drive to the sheriff's department?
I did.
Tell us, when you parked your car, where you went, what happened?
I parked my car and left everything as regular in my car, and walked through the front door and went to the window asking who I needed to see, and they, I guess, rang them upstairs, and Detective Lowen came downstairs, and I thought I was supposed to be picking my phone up over at a particular window, and he says, no, your phone is upstairs, so we would just like you to come upstairs, and that's where you can pick up your phone.
Boone believes she was tricked into coming down to the police station, then tricked into talking about what happened without fully understanding her rights. After Boone's testimony, her defense attorney, as well as the prosecutor, made oral arguments to the judge.
Judge, law enforcement, after they get a valid waiver of rights, that I'm not going to be silent, that I'm going to answer questions, go ahead, ask me and I'll answer the questions. Once that happens, law enforcement is trying to get a confession. Law enforcement is trying to get admissions that they can later use at trial to impeach the defendant and convict him. The law allows law enforcement at that stage to use deception, to lie, to trick. We found the murder weapon. It's got your DNA on it. Your co-defendant has come in here and confessed and implicated you. All those techniques when it's really deception. They don't have the DNA, they don't have the murder weapon, they don't have the co-defendant. It can be utilized to obtain a confession or an admission of guilt.
Why is he arguing something that is legally allowed, Mike? Why the police are allowed to do that? Why is he arguing that in a preliminary hearing? The police are allowed to use a ruse. They're allowed to use trickery. They're allowed to tell her, we're going to come in and give you your phone. They read her Miranda, which should say to her, I guess I'm probably going to be arrested because they're reading me my rights. If that doesn't occur to you, maybe you are hungover and still drunk.
Bill, I think the reason why he's doing it because it's obviously he's going to lose. He's lost the motion, and he's going to make some more final statements. I think he's doing it to get his thoughts on the record in case she's convicted of murder, second degree, and that will make an appealable issue. The judge's decision against him allows for an appeal later on after the trial is over. So if she's convicted, he will have an appealable issue. Where that will go, I don't know, but that's what it's for. If she gets convicted, say, of murder, second degree, manslaughter, and she could that would still be an appealable issue. But he's looking at what's coming up over the next horizon, and he's thinking, I got to lay down a record of what I see as police malfeasance before, during the investigation. And so it may not go anywhere, but he's got, an ethical obligation to zealously advocate for her. And he's getting it on the record so that he'll have something, transcript that to send to an appeals court in case he loses. I think he's doing the best he can. He knows that, he's lost the motion. He's just doing the best he can, getting it on the record. Even though it's probably not going to be effective, he just wants to get it out there, get it on the record.
Okay. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, just go right on the screen. You see that red button. Just click that subscribe button. It's free to do so. If you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. We appreciate all our fans, our friends, and subscribers that support this channel that is growing all the time now. We're growing all the time. Maybe it's Mike Geary. He's such a sexy guy. It's what's bringing all the new fans in. Let me go back to the court testimony here.
But prior to Miranda, you cannot deceive. Prior to Miranda, you cannot trick. That right is fundamental. You cannot be compelled to incriminate yourself. You cannot be forced to talk. It's got to be free will and a choice. And so you can't seduce or coerce someone into giving a statement. And the law is clear. When that happens, we've got to punish law enforcement to correct that type of misuse behavior. It's illegal. So you got Detective Kopsel on the one hand. I got to read your rights. And you have a right to remain silent. But within a minute before, the detective is telling Sarah Boone, we have to do this. We have to talk to you. Now, that's confusing. That's deceptive. There's nowhere in policy that should be allowed or is allowed. There's nowhere in the law that should be allowed. It's actually illegal to tell a suspect, we have to talk to you. We just have to, before reading Miranda rights.
Judge, the United States Supreme Court has said that confessions are good. They are good for society. It is good when guilty people are convicted. We stand by all the case law that we've cited, and you have reviewed the evidence from start to finish. Under the totality of the circumstances of that 2 hour and 6 minute statement that she gave to law enforcement, she knowingly and intelligently and voluntarily waived her Miranda rights. And under the case law, it was done perfectly fine. There's no requirement that that question number 9 get read. And as far as any credibility issues that are pertinent to the court's analysis, which the state would submit there is not, because we are conceding there was custody on February 25th. They are allowed to use subterfuge and deception to get somebody to come to the police station under the case law and authority cited. But if there is anything that is dependent upon the credibility of either the defendant's testimony or Detective Kopsel's testimony, the state would argue for the reasons of her being impaired by her own admission on the afternoon of February 24th, still from the night before, that her credibility is less than Detective Kopsel's. And of course, she has a bias and interest in the outcome of the case, whereas Detective Kopsel has no motivation to not tell the truth about whether she used deception to bring the defendant down to the police station, because that's perfectly acceptable. So we're asking you for the reasons that we stated in our multiple responses to their multiple amended motions to deny their motion to suppress. Thank you.
Any further argument, Mr. Owens?
No, Judge.
All right.
The judge later released a written order.
So basically, that was, I'll use the word mood again. I've been overusing mood, but he was making arguments that had no basis in the law. So it was sort of a waste of time. And, they've already, on this case, have wasted 4 years. So why he was arguing over this Miranda thing, where there was one other question that apparently wasn't asked, and the whole rights were read to her, except the one question says, "Oh, now that I've read your rights, are willing to answer questions." That's the final, what they refer to as the 9th question. And I think that's covered in the Miranda sheet that the NYPD uses. Now that I've read your rights, are you willing to answer questions? But some of the questions, again, in Miranda can sound a little bit redundant. And when you're not in trouble and they're read to you, it sounds like, why would anyone say, yeah, I want to talk to you after they're read? If you're not in trouble, when you're in trouble, obviously you're in crisis. You're in mental crisis, I would think. And some people think by talking, they're going to get themselves out of crisis. And that rarely happens.
Yeah, Billy, I remember reading a law review article on Miranda from a couple of years ago. And, over the years, everyone thought that in policing and uniformed law enforcement thought it was a really terrible decision. It was a 5-4, a very controversial decision, because it seems counterintuitive. A police officer, a detective wants to talk to you in interrogation, have an official interrogation. The first thing the detective has to tell you is that you don't have to talk to the detective. And oh, by the way, anything you do say to me can be used against you in the court of law. Oh, and by the way, you have the right to an attorney to really mess everything up. And if you can't afford that, we'll give you one for free. It seems so ridiculously counterintuitive, but we've lived with it, and it has become embedded and enshrined in our criminal justice system. However, over the years, the number of people who actually take advantage of Miranda and say, no, I do not want to talk to you without a lawyer present is very small, somewhere between 75 and 80% of all nationwide, now this is nationwide, defendants speak and waive their Miranda rights to have an attorney present and not talk to the police. I think probably it's because it's just become so much a part and so mundane that maybe it's really lost the alarming effect. And I always tell my students, if you ever get into a situation where a police officer is reading you Miranda, you better understand what is going on, because I think a lot of people don't. And when you've just had your boyfriend in a suitcase pass away on you and you're in the police station, you got to know it's an investigation and they're reading you Miranda. You have to pay attention. That's on her.
Mike, I just want to bring also the attention to everyone, and because most people that are listening tonight have been watching the Jennifer Soto, the Madeline Soto case, the stuff on Stearns.
Right.
And when we watched those, and I'm so happy that we got the copies of the interviews and the interrogations.
Right.
When you look at the difference between the interview/interrogation of Jennifer Soto as compared to Stephen Stearns, very different, right? First of all, Jennifer Soto was in a nice room, pictures on the wall, clock on the wall, a couch, looked like someone's office. That's the
Right.
difference between an interview and interrogation. Stephen Stearns was in clearly an interrogation room, ugly, disgusting room, dirty, a table, two chairs that were meant for the two detectives. Very different setting and meant to get a different outcome. By that I mean that bare room with no clock is meant to let you know you're not in a good place right now, right?
That's right.
Wouldn't you like to get out of here? So we're going to ask you some questions, and maybe you can walk out of here today, you know. But with Jennifer Soto, she was never read Miranda in her over 2-hour interview. It was an interview. It never crossed over. However, I have said from the beginning of that case, and I'm sorry to just segue into that case when this isn't about that case, but just to make a comparison, I think she's done things in that case to be arrested. She absolutely, they have enough to arrest her. And I don't know if they have enough to charge her with acting in concert murder, but they absolutely have enough to charge her with child abuse, with endangering the welfare of a minor, and potentially even with assisting this guy. How many times do you have to hear she calls his father and tells Stephen Stearns' father to get him an attorney, and he killed her daughter? I don't get it. I just don't get it. So I just want to give you folks listening the difference between an interview and an interrogation. Obviously, an interrogation, one of the first things the detectives did when they went into the room with the Stephen Stearns was they read him Miranda, and they got him to waive his rights. And then at some point, Stephen Stearns says, "Well, do you think I need an attorney?" You know, when he realized the shit was on, and he realized that he couldn't get out of it, you know. And so that's the difference. Now, in this, if she didn't understand what was going on, shame on her. Then she's a boob. You know, she goes, let's play a little bit. This is the day she was called in to get her phone and interviewed.
You'll get bruising, like someone hit you or something like that. It's called a contusion. So he had some injuries to his left shoulder. He had a cut near his lip. We could see his mouth was a little.
I haven't laid a
swollen.
hand on him.
Okay.
So she's described the injuries that Jorge had because she threw the suitcase down the stairs or kicked it down the stairs and it rolled down the stairs. So he had some blunt trauma. He had busted lip. So this was not a friendly, playful sex game they were playing, drunk game. There was some real animus involved here. There was some real hatred here. There was a real assault here. So for her to think that, oh, we were just playing games, no, that's no game when someone dies.
Also, too, he fell off my son's bike.
Okay.
So I don't know. And he's notorious for running into the wall or the hall tree. So
Okay. What about the scratches? Because there's also sex.
Yes.
Okay. Because there's also like a scratch on the back of his neck, kind of going, but it's going straight across.
I have no idea what that's from.
And they're all recent. They occurred recently. It wasn't something that occurred post or that occurred a week ago or 2 days ago, 3 days ago. They definitely occurred, the night leading up to when he was.
In all honesty, we have not gotten into it.
Okay.
That's why, the only thing I thought you guys were going to ask me about, which I was going to be honest with you anyway, are the scratch marks on his back.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, I have no idea what it is. No idea what it is. Nonetheless, I've had my son over the house too, so.
Well, your son was there when? When was he last there?
Oh, gosh.
From my understanding, he was there last Tuesday?
I don't know if it was Tuesday, but yes, he was there last week, so
Well, we're talking about Sunday.
Yeah.
We're just talking about what occurred Sunday. Because like I said, the injuries they occurred.
Tiffany Zoe in the chat. Yeah, this is the room that Sarah Boone is in, is 100% an interrogation room. As you can see, it's not very nice. I don't think any of us would want to be in that room voluntarily. It's not a nice room. So yes, that is 100%. One of the biggest hints you get, there's no clock on the wall. The color of the wall is very ugly. There's almost nothing in there but a table and the chairs necessary for the people in there to sit down.
Within that time period.
So you're talking about day before yesterday?
Sunday leading into Monday. You called us yesterday at 1, but the incident, you guys were painting and stuff the night prior.
Correct.
So we're talking about Sunday and then
That's
into
why
Monday.
I'm thoroughly confused, because we had a good time sitting on the back porch, having wine and smoking a couple of cigarettes, and then decided to go inside and literally paint, do puzzles, and play, and listen to music. That's why nobody got out of sorts. This is what's mind-blowing to me. Like, I have no clue. Nobody laid a hand on anybody.
He also had, like on the left side of his forehead, he had basically bruising, and on like his head and skull.
I have no idea.
As if something hit him.
I
consider
have not
force
touched him.
trauma.
I have not touched him. I have not touched him.
How would you get those injuries?
Tell me and we'll both know. I have not touched him.
Yesterday, when we took photographs of your overall body, and they did the buccal swabs, did they go under your fingernails?
No.
Okay. Are you willing to let us
Absolutely.
swab underneath your fingernails?
Go for it.
Okay.
I have no idea, and I don't want to seem out of sorts, but I have no idea. We had a good day. It was
at this point where she's obviously going to be arrested, I would not take the DNA from underneath her fingernails voluntarily. I would get a search warrant, because they could argue that she was in custody and she was not able to give consent because she was intimidated by the whole arrest process and she was being arrested. So I wouldn't rely on a voluntarily her saying, yes, you could swab underneath my fingernails to get DNA. I would get a search warrant. And she's not going anywhere because she's under arrest at this point. Mike?
Yeah, I think you're right, Billy. You want to cross those I's and dot those I's and cross those T's, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. But you're right. She could have said, yeah, put her hands out, take them, go for it. And, do that later after you arrest. And then you arrest her, you got her in custody. And then you get a search warrant. You get a search warrant. If people don't know, you can get it over the phone, get an okay by a judge. You get it fairly quickly and then do it. You're right. That's the actual proper way to do it. So later on, whatever evidence you get will not be suppressed. Once a judge signs a search warrant and you go and execute that search warrant and get that information, that evidence, then it's going to come into trial. You're right, absolutely right on that one. Definitely.
Well, Mike, just to bring to educate our audience on, Stephen Stearns agreed for the female detective asked him, do you mind if I look through your phone? He said, sure. She said, can I go through your phone? And he said, yeah, go ahead. And she goes, well, what's your code? And he freely gave the code, believing that I factory reset my phone. He believed all the bad photos that he had on there from years and years he had deleted because I did a factory reset by accident. That's not true. He didn't. But once the detectives found all those bad photos, what did they do? They were smart. They stopped and they got a search warrant, because a smart attorney could say, yes, he gave you permission just to look through his phone, not to do a complete fishing expedition to his cell phone. So, counselor, that's not what we did. When we saw there was criminal acts inside this phone, we stopped looking and we wrote up a search warrant. We had the district attorney write up a search warrant for the rest of the photos. So there is a warrant to search his phone. Boom. So now when a sharp attorney tries to get it thrown out at preliminary hearings, the judge will say, no, they did the right thing. He got permission. And then when they saw there was bad stuff in the phone, they got a search warrant. So, incidentally, the detectives on this case are from the very same office as Stefan Stearns. They're from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, the very same office. So, small world here.
Good day. We've had good days lately, even considering everything that's going on with our jobs and life in general and ex-wives and everything. It's been good. Like, I don't even know where this is coming from.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
said
even
the
know.
last physical was probably, you said, I think, a month ago? Where you got the injury, right? You said that was a month ago?
A few weeks, give or take, yeah.
A few weeks. That was the last, physical altercation between the two of you? You said a month ago he hit you with a curtain rod.
Yeah, with a curtain rod. That's why I can't believe you guys didn't take that either.
Wow.
Like, we've been good. I don't know if,
we've
since
been
the
good.
last time he got out of jail, we've been good, and he's been having his classes and seeing his probation officer, who's amazing. So.
What do you mean by good? What's your definition of good?
The probation officer?
Oh, no, you said you guys have been good. What's your definition?
I've been good. I don't think you all understand. He comes at me all the time. He comes at me. So it's either I flee or try to go upstairs and go to sleep. That's usually what it is. And I don't know if you talked to Brian about any of that, but most of the time when I flee, I go over there. So.
Right, but you're saying that you guys have been good, and when I asked you yesterday, the last incident that you could remember was the curtain rod incident, which you said was a month ago, so.
Give or take.
Right, so what do you mean by he comes after you?
He gets belligerently drunk. I don't know if you all have looked through my phone yet and seen any of the pictures and the videos that I have taken. And at one point, I started documenting everything.
Okay.
So you all will see in my pictures, bloody fingers, split foreheads. He split my nose. I've got this.
Right.
I don't know if Brian told you about it, where I had to have I had one really bad surgery, but then it got really, 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 really bad, where I had to go 4 or 5 more times afterwards for them to tend to it. From him poking me in the back of the leg.
Right.
So it's.
Then why are you still with him?
Everybody asks me that. When I tell you guys this, I really love him. I do. And I feel like I can help him. I feel like I could help him, which I did, because he came a really long way from where he was in Philadelphia to moving back to here and to dealing with everything else that he's been dealing with. I've really helped him. I've bailed him out of jail, 3 times. I've gone to every single hearing and every single arraignment, everything that I did for him. Gone to see all his public defenders, go to the state. I've gone to the state. I did everything for him because I'm trying to help him, because I had hope in him. And he was trying. He was really trying. And then he starts to think about things, and I think he gets overwhelmed. And then it's the next thing I know, he's drinking. So it's oh man, I know where this is going to go. So I'm going to go upstairs and read a book, or I'm going to go for a bike ride, or I'm going to do something else. Where I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. The occasional wine, whatever, or if it's a weekend, that's when you have a good time. You don't have to wake up the next day. I have to wake up the next day and do things. I have to tend to Lucas. I have to take him to school. I have all this stuff to do. He doesn't know how to, maintain himself, where I can do 50 things at once and still know the 50 things more prior that I need to get done. He can't process like that. He didn't process like that. So he would not literally, but have smoke coming out of his ears. So the next thing you know, he doesn't want to deal with it. I'm going to go get something to drink. So the majority of the time, I would hang out outside or do something else because I don't want to drink. And every time, his job broke his heart. And it made me sad because he had so much pride in his job.
And the store that he took care of so much totally went downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And that broke his heart because he had put so much work and effort into fixing it up. And his manager was awful and basically gave up on all of the employees. So I think that had a huge bearing on why he would drink so much. His ex-wife is bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
She was all over him all the time. Send me money, send me money, send me money. How can I send you money when I don't have a job? And he's still trying to take care of me and Lucas by paying a bill here or there, getting some groceries. So he always had something on his mind, which is why, again, I got the puzzles and the bank to try to get him off of it so we don't have a drink, or he doesn't have a drink. So when you all see my phone, you can see all of the damage he has done to me and the videos of him smashing my television because he's belligerently drunk. Where most of the time, I just don't want to be there. And I try to help him. I try to calm him down.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, he just passes out.
Well, yesterday it made it sound like you guys were just drinking like a glass or two. Like, yeah, you obviously had the bottle, but you told me on recording like that you were not drunk. He was not drunk. You guys were having a good time.
I can't get drunk. Number one, I do not want to get drunk. I don't like being non-compos mentis, having my wits about myself. I don't like feeling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just saying you're making it sound like he's a raging alcoholic today, and yesterday I was kind of asking you those questions and you're like a little defensive, like, no, we're not alcoholics.
I'm not.
We are not, you know, but you guys were both sober on Sunday, to your knowledge, because when I said you went and passed out, you were like, no, I didn't pass out, I just fell asleep. So now it's kind of like, what is it? Were you guys drinking and it got out of hand and it got physical?
No.
Or is it?
Sunday was one of the better days that we have had in quite some time. He's dancing with my dog. You can see that too on the pictures, him loving the dog. He loves the dog and dancing around, having a good time, and just being happy kind of thing. He doesn't know, I can get like maybe 2-3 glasses of wine and I'll be fine. But I have to have my wits about myself because I don't know what to expect.
Well, let's talk about Sunday. What was Sunday? How were you, like, how many glasses of wine did you have? How many glasses of wine did he have? The bottle was gone. I mean, I don't know if you poured any out. Yes.
No, that was from previous.
You said that there was a half bottle left over.
Yeah, about this much.
Mm-hmm. And then that you had went, well, I don't even know how the wine, how'd you guys get the wine for Sunday?
I'm guessing he went to Publix.
Does he like leave the house and you stay home, or do you go to Publix? Like, cause
sometimes I'll go with him.
Okay. Did you go with him Sunday to Publix?
So most of the time what happens is, because the convenience store where we get cigarettes is here, and then Publix literally is cattywampus to it.
Okay.
So what he'll do is he'll go by Publix, and then on the way back, catch the convenience store.
Okay.
So
is that what he did Sunday?
I'm guessing that's what he did, because the next thing I know, he's walking in with a bottle.
Okay.
So it's him trying to be nice, so I don't have to go out and do it. Plus, there's stuff that are around the house that I had to take care of. So that's usually what will happen. Or I'm folding laundry and he'll go run out and do whatever.
Okay. So where were you guys at on?
They have the relationship of an abusive relationship.
Sure.
And she puts up with it. And, I wouldn't doubt, based on what we've seen, she gives the abuse right back. It's not a one-way street of abuse. I think they're just sort of happy with each other, and that's what they know. They're both clearly alcoholics, and the irrational way that she acts or acted towards him, how is it a game to climb into a suitcase and then have her zip it up and think that's funny and then not let you out? I mean, that is an alcoholic mentality and potentially someone's going to use the excuse that they're an abused woman.
Yeah, they had several years, 2018, 2020, something like that, where there was drama. He had been arrested for abusing her. She had been arrested for abusing him. These are the kinds of cases that and I know as a law enforcement officer, it's a nightmare because you get these couples who will not do anything really to constructively improve their lives. Quite often there's alcohol involved. There's a long-term relationship involved. They're sharing a home. So it's really difficult from law enforcement to effectively intervene in these people's lives. So what you end up with is just making those arrests, hoping that the more arrests you make, the less violence there'll be. But yeah, you could see how there's a lot of drama going on between he and she. And she puts herself there as the victim. Unfortunately for her, when she said, did you look through my phone and everything? She forgot the video she took when in a drunken state the night before, which is really at the crux of the state's case against her here. But these are nightmare cases for law enforcement because there are many couples like this that don't go to this extreme, but this does happen. This is the kind of thing you see. And for her to sit there and say, I'm doing this for him. It's almost as she's living her life just to be for him, to improve him. And then when the female officer asks, why are you still together? And she says, because I love him. This isn't, I don't think it's really always acting. Sometimes I think she's actually saying it. I don't think she's saying it just for effect. She may actually in a non-positive way, in a way that actually is detrimental to both parties in that relationship, she continues the relationship with him rather than just leaving and maybe he'll change, who knows. But they are deeply enmeshed in each other's drama, and it ended in that suitcase.
Absolutely. Angel Baby 4210. She is the aggressor. Yeah, it certainly appears that way, that she's the aggressor. Apparently, he was a very small guy, too, like 5 foot, 220 pounds or something.
Yeah.
Not that doesn't mean he couldn't be strong or abusive. Candace Breeze, that suitcase also got flipped over at some point. Yes, I believe it did. Also, I think she kicked it down the stairs, too.
Yes.
And I think that's how he suffered his blunt trauma injuries from inside that suitcase. Just to mention something about domestic violence, as a police sergeant, myself and Mike, we went to hundreds of these. And really, in our time on the NYPD, it got from like a permissive sort of attitude toward the dealing with domestic violence to almost a zero tolerance. So if you went to someone's house and there was a drunk husband or a drunk wife, and it was your job to make a determination, an Angel Baby 4210, thank you for that, who was the primary aggressor. And that person would get arrested in most cases. To tell you the truth, I never like to walk away from a domestic violence case without putting handcuffs on somebody, because if I walked away and it was sort of like, borderline, and I didn't make the arrest, and then one of them killed the other one, who do you think they're coming looking for? They're coming looking for the patrol sergeant. And the cops will give you up in 2 seconds. Who was the boss on the scene? It was Cannon, So I made sure in all those domestic violence incidents that I responded to, if the law was abridged, I didn't think twice of putting handcuffs on someone and arresting someone. And believe it or not, that's what has dropped domestic violence homicides to the lowest levels probably ever, because of that policy, not just by the NYPD, but just about every police department in this land has adopted that policy. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, I was with you on that one because, years ago you wouldn't want to make that arrest. And then later on, you were told mandatory arrests in many situations. And when I was a sergeant up in the 3-0, I used to tell the guys on patrol and the ladies on patrol, look, you got to make the arrest here. You have to do it. And they'd grumble about it because cops want to make arrests for burglary, robbery, gun possession, the exciting things, the things that they got on the job to do. They don't want to lock up a husband or a wife, because there's children around and everything else. And there they are living in their home. You don't want to do that, but you have to. And I used to always tell them, look, I'm an attorney. I'm protecting you. You'll thank me later. But they used to grumble. But I tell them, look, that's it. You got to do it. And then I'd go into the station house because we always didn't have a lot of cars out. Sometimes we only have like 6 cars running. And I used to tell the lieutenant, in the station house, look, I'm going to, I had to do this because of what happened. They'd grumble, but you got to do what you got to do to keep the officers safe and to keep everybody safe in that situation. Because I do remember a situation where, as you talked about, a cop went to a scene, didn't make the arrest for certain reasons, and then they left. And about 3 hours later, the husband killed the wife with a gun. And so not only did he get arrested for murder, but the cop got arrested. He lost his job. He lost everything. So it was a really tragic thing. Those tragedies happen, and you try your best to stop them from happening. But yeah, that's what a lot of departments have, those mandatory arrest policies. And those are good policies because a lot of times you are not sure who was the aggressor. You do the best you can. Sometimes we just simply arrest both of them and say, I don't know, we can't make the determination. One's got a bloody nose, one's got a split lip, one's got a bruised eye, one's got scratches all over them, another one's bleeding from a shot in the head. These are the things that happen. These are nightmares. This couple was probably a nightmare for the local police.
Mike, sometimes when you can't determine who the primary aggressor is, you lock them both up.
That's right.
Because you got to leave them both together to beat the shit out of each other, or one to grab a knife and stab the other one to death, or the husband to beat the wife to death. No, guess what? You're both going to jail tonight. This way, who could sleep really well when he goes home? Me, because I will not sleep if I leave here and I leave you two guys to your own devices. I shudder to think what will happen. This was like the next day. This is what she looked like.
Him and then I called you guys.
Did he get here before the fire department got here?
Who?
Your husband or your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. Where did he live at?
Right down the street.
Okay. So you were playing and who zipped him up?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions did he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None that I know of.
Any medicine?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. That's all that happened.
Playing hide and seek.
I don't know if he had a heart attack or what in there.
Playing hide and seek seems like such a good game to play after you've drank a bottle of wine, which I'm sure it wasn't a bottle. I'm sure there was several bottles of wine. Let's play hide and seek. One of us will pass out and you'll never find me, except this became somehow a suitcase became part of this game. And that's where things got deadly.
I don't know what happened.
So how long were you doing CPR on him prior to you calling 911? You tried that all morning?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I called him while I was
what
doing
time
CPR.
did you start? Probably give me a rough ballpark. Here, let me fill this deputy in, okay?
Please, may I have my Dr. Pepper? I am so cotton mouth right now.
Ma'am, and you can't talk to him until we get done with this, okay?
Just don't leave, okay, Brian?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm getting Lucas.
I know.
Do me a favor. Stand over there by that car. Give me 1 second. Just give us a second, okay?
Somebody else on that call operation.
It's on the counter.
I can't move anything from out of the house. Here, I want you to sit down because I don't want you passing out. This is probably a lot for you to deal with, right? Sit. I don't
water. Water.
I can get you some water, okay? I want you not on your feet because I don't want you passing out on me.
Generator call.
I need water.
Okay, I'll get some for you.
You're trying to Charlie, but you're on it.
Okay, so you don't live here in this house?
No. I live down in Lake Winona Cove.
Lake Winona Cove. Okay.
So kind of tell me how you came here today, or
Well, I've been calling.
come down here so we got to talk.
They're trying to interview some of the neighbors and stuff as to what the hell
Yeah.
went on here. She's obviously trying to get people other than herself involved in this, and it's sort of distressing to see. When is she going to realize, or does she ever realize that what she did was criminal? Here she is on the screen again.
She wants to say something. She wants to talk. I'm on. Yeah.
Like,
Well, we're
you don't
here,
know
so
anything though, like why or how?
So we will not know the answer to that because we're not doctors. So what's going to happen is we're going to go to the medical examiner's office and he'll have what's called an autopsy. Yeah. That'll be first thing tomorrow morning. I'll know a lot, hopefully a lot more tomorrow morning as far as him. But I cannot, there's no way I could say how, why. So just by looking at him, like, why is he purple? Oh, that's normal when someone passes away.
Why is he purple? Because he's dead.
Yeah, that's normal.
Because he's dead. He died of asphyxia. It's called lividity. That's why he's purple. It's first of all, it's baffling to me as to why they didn't lock her up right there. How do you wait a day till the autopsy's over? She admitted she took part in, and maybe they didn't see the video yet of her.
You're right.
The video of her telling him that she wasn't going to help him get out of the suitcase, and that he deserves it and all of that stuff. So maybe maybe they didn't see that yet. This I'll play it right now. Let me put it back up there. So for folks that came in late, this is what what we were talking about when and to watch this and to not think that this lady's nuts.
Sarah.
He's yelling out to her from the suitcase.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
You think you can get that drunk on 2 glasses of wine? Her voice, her speech is so slurred. I don't think 2 glasses of wine slurs your speech like that. Her speech is almost unintelligible. Let's play it back to hear what she says.
Sarah.
From the suitcase, he's yelling, Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
So that's basically saying she did this to him for everything that he's done to her. So
Intentionally, right?
That's right. So that's what's called, Mike, premeditation, or in the Gearyism, consciousness of guilt.
Guilt.
She
That's right.
did this to him on purpose to get back at him, and she's admitting that right there.
That's
This is
right.
like for everything you did to me.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
How many people out there would have another human being say to them, call out your name, Sarah, Mike, Bill, Joan, Candace, I can't breathe. How many of you would just basically say, oh, that's too bad, I'm not helping you? How many could do that? I'm not going to say, by a show of hands.
Right.
How many could do that? If another human being is in distress, it's my instinct to help them. When he's basically begging for his life, and she's basically saying, good for you, it's sort of a little tough to listen to.
Yeah, that's when you do and you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
That's on you. Sarah, I can't breathe, baby. That's on you. I hope the jury likes when they hear that.
Remember, Bill, 24 hours later, she's in the interrogation room saying, I love him so much, I can't leave him. And here she is.
Mike, how many times have you heard that at a domestic violence
Right.
scene?
Right.
When you put the husband in handcuffs and they say, I love him so much. Don't take him away. He's a good man. Okay.
Yeah.
For your protection, he's getting arrested. Okay. And then you can do whatever you want. You know, many times in domestic violence cases, the complainant will refuse to press charges. But that's why in New York City, we have something called PSNY. People's state of New York are so offended by what your husband did to you, we're going to prosecute him, right? Because
right.
so many times in domestic violence cases, the victim refuses to prosecute. And the state is aware of that game. So they came up with something called People's State of New York. And in Florida, it could be People's State of Florida can be the complaining witness on it. And that was necessary to do because these cases became basically null and void when the complainant refused to follow it through. Let's just go back. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. Yeah, you have to do it because if you don't do that, then probably 2/3 to 3/4 of all the domestic violence cases will end up in the case being dismissed. And that's not good for anybody.
No, absolutely not. Let me go back to this quickly and then we'll.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or handsome. Might want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or handsome.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah.
You.
Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the up.
Sarah.
Now that's just over 2 minutes of
That's absolutely not A, that's not 2 glasses of wine. B, that is not love. That is absolutely not love when you will not come to the assistance of someone that is dying right before your eyes, begging you to let them out of the damn suitcase. And you just keep saying, no, that's for when you did this to me. No, that's from when you did that to me. That's for cheating on me. That's for this. That's for that. She just talked her way, or this videoed her way into life in 25 to life, at least. She's not getting a manslaughter thing on this, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, I don't think so. This doesn't look like anything that was reckless or unplanned. The idea that she got him somehow, they were probably drinking, and he, these feelings of like anger at him. Remember, in vino veritas, in wine, there's truth. The truth is she may love him, but she's also very angry at him. So she probably got enough alcohol into her system, wanted to teach him a lesson. He was probably maybe a little drunker than her. She talked him into the suitcase thing. She kicks it down the flight of stairs. He goes tumbling ass over tea kettle down the stairs. He's at the bottom of the stairs, and she's enjoying the control. This is payback for all the times that he made her feel bad, choking her, cheating on her, that sort of thing. Yeah, you are absolutely right. That little 2 minutes of video, that is, if she's convicted, that will be the thing that convicted her and put her in prison for the rest of her life.
I think that's probably the most powerful piece of evidence that, of course, the defense attorneys would love to try to get that thrown out. And I don't see a prayer in hell that could happen. We're going to listen to a quick little testimony from the arresting detective. This is the female detective who tricked her.
How long have you been a homicide detective?
Over 6 years.
And what's your total experience with the Orange County Sheriff's Office in terms of years?
I am going on 12 years.
Any prior law enforcement experience prior to joining the sheriff's office? And in the homicide unit, how is it that you get notified that you shall be the lead investigator on a case?
So for this case specifically, my team was on call that week for homicides. And so the deputy on the scene would notify the call center to notify the on-call homicide.
All right, and is it fair to say that you guys have 3 teams of 4?
Yes.
And each of the third weeks you will be on call?
Yes.
And then through some other random distribution, it's determined who of the 4 will be the lead?
Correct.
And it was your turn to investigate the death of Jorge Torres?
Yes.
And you were notified of this on February 24th of 2020 in the afternoon?
Yes.
About what time were you notified?
I would have to look at the CAD sheet to recall directly, but I would assume within 30 minutes to an hour of deputies being on scene.
All right, and do you go to the scene first or do you do anything else?
For this particular incident, I got my partner, Detective Sarah Boone, and we headed out to the scene.
All right, and when you got to the scene, what did you do?
I met with the deputies there, and they kind of just briefed me on what was going on and what they responded to.
Did you do a walkthrough of the scene?
I did, yes.
And then was a search warrant drafted for the residence?
Yes.
And later executed?
Correct.
Did you have any contact with somebody identified to you as Sarah Boone on the scene?
Yes.
Do you see Sarah Boone in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point out where she is and what she's wearing?
She's over here on my left, and she's wearing blue.
May the record reflect she's identified the defendant.
Record will so reflect.
When did you first have contact with her?
If I'm not mistaken, she was outside of the apartment when I got there. So once I spoke with deputies, I then went and introduced myself to her.
All right, and did you ask her any questions at this time as you guys are standing outside of the residence?
Not like detailed questions about like what happened, because I already was told by deputies what she had told them. So it's more just to like introduce myself and to let her know, you know, we're doing a search warrant and the procedures of how we do things.
And when you respond to a scene, do you respond in plain clothes?
I do, yeah, like business professional.
Like what you're wearing?
Yes.
And when you made contact with her outside of her residence for this first contact, were you alone or was your partner Scott Lowen with you?
I believe Scott was with me.
And was he also similarly dressed in business casual?
Yes.
All right. And so how long was this initial interaction with Ms. Boone?
Not long. Maybe a couple minutes to a few minutes.
Okay. And this was out on the sidewalk in front of her home?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, she was at a neighbor's residence, like sitting out on their like front porch area.
Do you recall what you asked her in this initial contact?
Do I recall what?
You asked her?
No.
Okay. So it was just a couple of minutes that you were there with her?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what do you do after your first contact with her?
So once I did my walkthrough, we decided to go with a search warrant for the scene. So that was written by somebody else. And then once that was executed, we went in there further with CSIs. And then we talked to Brian Boone, which was the ex-husband. And then I believe we then sat Sarah into our unmarked vehicle and had a conversation with her.
Was that conversation in the unmarked vehicle recorded?
Yes, audio recorded.
And can you describe this unmarked vehicle for the court?
At the time, I was in an unmarked Pathfinder, so it was like gray in color. Didn't look like it didn't say like law enforcement or police or anything on the exterior. And there were lights like inside.
Where did everybody sit in this Pathfinder?
I sat in the driver's seat. Sarah sat in the front passenger seat, and Detective Scott Lowen sat in the back seat.
Did you have any conversation with her about the facts of the case or your investigation that wasn't recorded inside the car?
No.
And that was all recorded and turned over to the state attorney's office?
Yes.
And you announced the date and time of the start of this interview on that recording, did you not? Okay. Is it fair to say that it had been about 3 or 4 hours since the initial call out for a 911?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, because I believe we started interviewing her right before 5 p.m.
And is there any particular reason for executing the search warrant and speaking to another witness or witnesses prior to interviewing Miss Boone?
Just based off the situation, what was happening.
Okay. Is it in any way unusual to gather evidence before talking to the last person to see a decedent alive? Okay. At some point during this day, which was February 24th of 2020, was her cellular phone device collected?
It was.
And when was that?
That same day.
I mean, when time-wise in relation to talking to her?
Well, I noticed the phone was in the kitchen area, but I didn't touch anything until CSI's documented everything, photographs. And, so I don't think I really touched it until after I had talked to her about going through it.
All right. And ultimately, was she placed under arrest on February 24th, 2020?
No.
After she got out of her car, was she free to remain on the scene or free to leave?
Yeah. Not go back in her house. But yeah, she able to leave.
Prior to that, had she been detained and requested not to leave the scene?
Right. One more time.
Prior to your interview with her in the car, had she been asked or ordered to stay on the scene?
I find this a little bit unusual. I mean, there's no way if I responded to that scene and I saw what happened, there's no way Sarah Boone would have been free. I'll tell you that right now. She would have been accompanied to the station house, to the detective squad. She would have stayed overnight there. We would have talked to her, interrogated her through the night. You had probable cause already. I mean, maybe they didn't have the video at that point.
Yeah.
Well, because they had her phone and they needed to get a search warrant for her phone. So maybe they didn't look through the phone because that would be a violation unless they had permission from her. And of course, she could argue that she didn't give permission because she was intoxicated. So could that be the reason they didn't detain her, arrest her? You can also detain someone without arresting them. They can come in voluntarily, and then you can establish probable cause through the interview and through the interrogation. But I'm a little surprised that they didn't detain her that night or that day.
Yeah, you also think about it. They hadn't probably gotten the autopsy results back because I think for earlier on when you're showing the video with the initial sheriff's deputy talking to her, and they talk about his pallor and why was he purple, and she said we won't know until after the autopsy. So maybe they just wanted to just wait a little bit more, figuring she's not a flight risk. Maybe just wait a few more minutes. But you're right. In New York City, you would have detained her, and they could have done the same thing, detain her, and they could have held her for like 12 hours or 24 hours and gotten some more information in case she decided to leave or something like that. But I think that's probably what they were looking for. You're right. They didn't have the phone, and they didn't have the search warrant for it. I'm sorry, they hadn't gone through the phone because they hadn't gotten the search warrant and the autopsy. That's what they were, I think, waiting for. But within 24 hours of that, that's when they did the initial interview. But you're right. In New York City, they do things a lot different than they do in Orange County in Florida.
LWLW, they didn't see the videos on the phone until after this initial interrogation. Right. LW, thank you. And I think that was probably that was probably the case because they needed a search warrant to actually look at those videos. And again, you can have a defendant give you permission to look through it, but this defendant can claim I was intoxicated, I didn't know what they were talking about, and the evidence can be suppressed. So they probably didn't look through it till the next day, but I still don't like the idea of letting her go free, even after some of the admissions she made on the scene.
Right.
there's no way I would have let her walk free. There is no way on earth I would. And again, Orange County Sheriff's Office does things a little bit differently than New York City. I have nothing but praise for them in the way that they conducted themselves during the Madeline Soto case. I thought they did a fantastic job. So I'm not going to criticize them, but look, you can watch some of the best detectives in the world on the stand, and you know, the courtroom is the venue, is the jurisdiction of the legal profession. So they're allowed and made to look good in a courtroom, where a cop, that's not his field of play for the most part. It is. You have to be good at that too, but the street is, and the field is where detectives and police excel. And it does get to the point where you must excel in the courtroom too, or else you can lose the cases that you bring forth. As you can see, there's so much to this case. Hopefully, this case will be going to trial, perhaps as early as this week. Tomorrow, they're supposed to start picking the jury. They can always, it can always be put off. Look, this case has been put off for 4 years, but it seems to be a tremendously interesting case. The stakes are very high. I believe that Sarah Boone has an uphill climb here, and it's going to be tough for her to beat these charges. Mike, your final thoughts?
Yeah, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting that Sarah Boone gets convicted. Between the video and her the video that she made herself, her initial statements to the police as when they first were there, and then her what's going to be admitted in her official interview with the interrogation. I think really there's very little to show that that she was acting recklessly and this was just an accident. I think that this was all in a way planned. Once she got him in the suitcase, she started to realize all the things that he had done to her. She had him at her mercy. And unfortunately, she went overboard, and poor Jorge Torres died from her actions. So if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on the state in this case. But hopefully this case will start this week and be done within like 2 weeks. And hopefully justice for Mr. Torres, and also justice for Sarah, whatever she deserves, hopefully she'll get.
Well said, Mike. You know, this case has been dragging on for 4 years, and to say that she's a difficult defendant would be putting it mildly. But I think this judge who has the case now has had it, and he's going to move forward with this case. Just think of all the motions that the prior 8 attorneys have submitted to the court, and that's why this has taken 4 years to even get to this point. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This is Sunday night, October 6th already. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. This is a very interesting case, and we will stay with it as it proceeds along. Schmitty, always good to see you in the chat. She's thanking Professor Geary. Look, Mike, you're getting so much love.
I got another fan.
Thank
I got
you.
like 6
Mike,
now.
I thought Mike had 1 fan. Now it seems like he has at least 2 fans. So that's
I got a whole bunch now.
good.
Thank you.
Schmitty, thank you, Sergeant Bill. Oh, I look forward to updates. Candace Breeze, thank you. And thank you for being so active in the chat, Candace.
Yes, thank you.
Jane Summer, Mr. Owens filed a motion 2 hours ago to suppress another part of Sarah interrogation. Drunk as a bear asking to use neighbor's bathroom. Yeah, I mean, look, if they get to play that video from her phone, it's so clear that she's intoxicated. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to determine that she was drunk. She was slurring her words, and it was really a little bit outrageous. So anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon, along with myself and Professor Mike Geary. Thanks for tuning in. This is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.